Coming to you from the Windy City. Welcome to Let's Talk Shop, a podcast about all things cloud and enterprise tech. Listen to insights and guest interviews with IT thought leaders and professionals. Now, here's your host, Elias Kanaser.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Let's Talk Shop. Today it's different. We are going to move away from all of my ex-Gartner colleagues, from all the strictly cloud talk, and we're going to talk to a vendor that is near and dear to my heart. I grew up with this vendor during my entire time in the data center. They've always been a leader when it came to networking. So I'm super excited to have a guest from Juniper Networks for the first time. Kyle Baxter, Senior Product Manager for Juniper Apstra. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to be a part of your show today.
I am too. So we're going to talk about Juniper Apstra. I haven't been in the data center for a very long time. So before I give this episode a little bit of a setup, tell me about your role at Juniper, but tell me more importantly about Juniper Apstra. If I didn't know anything about it, summarize it for me. Go.
Excellent. Yeah, let's do that. So as you said, my name's Kyle Baxter. I'm a senior product manager here at Juniper. So as my title indicates, I work with the engineering team to lead our product and vision and what we are going to be doing with our solution going forward. So what Juniper Apstra is, let's start from the beginning. It was actually a startup that was founded by several industry experts, former Juniper and Arista engineers and experts that decided that the network, and especially the data center, can be operated in a new way. There's got to be a better way to do it than just driving through the CLI and depending on the CLI for everything. So that was how it was started, and the premise it was started with is to completely change how data center networks are managed and drive it through what we call intent. So Apstra invented the term called intent-based networking. So instead of driving your network from the CLI, the goal is now you're driving it from a business intent. So what do you want your business outcomes to be? And Apstra figures out and turns that into the CLI. So you no longer need CLI experts. You just need general network experts that can know your business outcomes and drive to the desired outcomes. And it's all done and based on stamped, reliable designs. So that's one of the major keys is we have what we call blueprints. And so whether it's a small edge data center or a three-stage IP flow fabric, or even a large five-stage IP flow fabric, we have industry standard designs that are repeatable and will work every time that you stamp out and you go off and run your business. So it changes how people think of the data center. Instead of looking at it as a cost center, as truly just a pure cost center. Now it changes it to a way where they can drive business outcomes and accelerate their business to new outcomes going forward.
I love it. And this is one of the things that I always remember Juniper with is intent-based. And to be honest with you, intent-based is it's prior to AI. It is the AI, right? That's, that was the
exactly
whole point, right? So the whole point is to just, instead of trying to code something or script something or integrate something, hey, just do this for me. This is my end result. Do it for me. And all of this Gen AI type, I think, is going in that direction. I think a lot of the providers, be it cloud or some of the traditional data center vendors, are all moving into that AI. But Juniper was always there first. And to be honest with you, during my time at Gartner, one of the things that I was thinking about is, what does the maturity model look like for clouds? And at one point, I was talking about the kind of the end result of where you want to get to from a cloud perspective is having an intelligence layer where you can simply state my business outcome. I'm trying to do this, and I want everything else to then automatically happens. Now, when I was talking about it, it was, hey, you're kind of way into the future, but with Chat GPT and with, some of the Gen AI, it almost now feels like we're pretty close to that. So I'm
Exactly.
super intrigued, and I hope Juniper doesn't let go of the intent-based term and the business outcomes and jump on this AI stuff, because I think you have it exactly right. But I want to dwell a little bit more. So we live in a world where infrastructure is everywhere, right? It's not just in the data center. It's not just in the cloud anymore.
Hmm.
It's everywhere. It's at the edge. It's in the data center. It's in the cloud. It's in multiple different clouds. You have to be able to operate your on-premises environment, your edge locations with the same ease, the same user experience that you do in the cloud. So I'm curious from that perspective, tell me a little bit about, does Apstra give me that type of ease, that type of functionality that I would find with an AWS or an Azure or Google for that matter?
It absolutely does. And the way we've done it is we've built the product on three major pillars that we believe are absolutely key to driving a data center, and to be able to do it at scale and at speed. The first pillar is reliability. And so while it sounds obvious, you got to have a reliable data center. We all know that, but it's how do you do that, and
Okay.
how do you do that at speed? Because everybody wants speed, but they also want reliability. And the way we do that is with those blueprints that I talked about. So we have, validated designs that we can stamp out and repeat and do over and over, and they're going to work every single time. We also have continuous validation. So as part of the solution, we constantly gather telemetry and data from all the managed devices, and we can constantly and continuously compare that against your intent. So if something deviates or goes out of bounds, we can alert you immediately. And so that way you can take actions and hopefully reduce that mean time to repair, or even in cases where the network always gets blamed first, you can reduce that mean time to innocence. The second pillar is the experience. So Juniper is very focused as a whole from experience first networking. If you go look at any marketing campaigns, that's where we lead. And Apstra absolutely goes into that same piece. And like I was talking about from the beginning, the whole goal was to change how data centers are managed and to create more simplicity, ease of use, and drastically reduce the complexity. Because no one likes a solution that is complex and expensive to operate and maintain. No
That's
one
right.
wants that. And
Right.
so with intent-based networking, you can remove that complexity because you no longer have to focus on the CLI, and that's a huge win. We have several customers that are large enterprises out there, that love that capability, because now they no longer have to depend on highly skilled and certified CLI experts. And in today's age where people are moving and leaving and going to other opportunities, and they lose that tribal knowledge,
Right.
that is absolutely key. And Apstra can keep that that single source of truth and know exactly what's going on in your network, and so that way you can reduce that need. One of our customers even said that the bottom line is you no longer need an engineer that knows Cisco, Juniper, Arista, or Dell, or whatever vendor. You just need a guy that knows how to click with a mouse. Well, that's well, that's maybe a little dramatic.
Yeah. I wish it was that easy, but I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But the point there is that you have that flexibility now to hire differently. You don't have to look at what certification do you have. You just have to see, can you understand general network concepts, and then that blends that expertise from your private cloud to your public cloud. The third pillar is around multi-vendor. And so this was something that was started when Apstra was a startup before it was acquired by Juniper,
Okay.
and it's absolutely a key that's going to continue. And it's been a big value that we've been able to leverage, because obviously supply chains are getting better, but hardware lead times are still sometimes painfully long. And so what that multi-vendor strategy allows is now it frees companies and enterprises from that tie-in to a specific vendor. So now they can play vendors against each other, and and do it, get into a bidding war, or who can get them the right hardware the fastest. Because hardware has become more of a
Commodity.
commodity. Yeah, it's a commodity, in a way. Yes, everybody has their own special tweaks, but the difference between a Juniper hardware and a Arista hardware and a Cisco hardware, there's very minor differences.
Right.
The difference is how you operate that, and that's what Apstra brings with that multi-vendor capability. Is now no longer what switch you can get. If you need 96 ports, you just find whatever hardware you can get, and then you stick it in there, and you know it's going to work because of those validated designs.
So tell me a little bit about that. Just so I can understand it. So let's say, can I get a Cisco switch and then have Apstra manage it? Like, would it become an abstraction layer or virtualize it, or how would
Absolutely.
that work?
Absolutely. So when you're building your data center within Apstra, you don't ever pick what vendor you want until the very end. So
Okay.
you build your whole design on those intent-based business outcomes.
Okay.
Saying, for example, I want it to be a 3-stage IP flow fabric with X number of spines and X number of leaves for whatever subscription level you want. I want these many VLANs for virtual networks and routing zones and whatever it is you need. And then at the very end, you say, oh, and by the way, I want it on Cisco hardware or Juniper hardware, or if vendors work together, you can mix within a fabric, but likely you probably don't, or you keep certain layers in the fabric at the same vendor for just interop ease of mind. And then Apstra figures out and deduces what the actual CLI configuration is needed based on your intent. So it really frees you up from having to be a Cisco CLI expert or Juniper CLI expert or even Arista or whatever vendor. You just have to know general vendor networking or just general networking terms.
So would that also be the case for, let's say, a VMware environment? How would it work with, like, let's say, NSX? Would it abstract? Would it integrate? Like, I'm curious now.
Yeah. So we don't necessarily manage, vCenter or NSXT, but we definitely have integrations.
Okay.
Because there's a definite tie-in. Apps just focus on managing the switches, but there is specific integrations we have where we can get what's going on in your virtual networks that are hosted in your racks where the switches that are managed by Apstra are located. So that way you can see is what you configured on the virtual side also matching what's configured on the switches, because that's a really common use case for errors is mismatching config between what's on the virtual side versus what's on the actual switch for the networking side. And so it can flag those and even have simple one-click resolutions to resolve those to fix mismatching configuration.
So what about the edge? So, today there's a lot of these smaller data centers, let's say, that are spread out. I'm assuming I can also deliver an appliance, virtual or physical, to the edge.
Yes. We have either both use cases. Apstra is a virtual machine, so
Okay.
you can deploy it anywhere. So we have use cases of companies that deploy one instance of Apstra, say, in their headquarters, and they have WAN networking to their remote site, and they deploy what we call a collapsed fabric, or maybe it's a small data center where there's two switches and a basically a very like a collapsed spine architecture, and you can use that Apstra instance to manage multiple data centers. So you can use it to manage all the ones in your headquarters, all your remote data centers or edge data centers. We also even have use cases where customers have deployed Apstra in those remote locations if they don't have the right networking or they just don't have the bandwidth to get the right like round trip time, because there is a limit where
Sure.
if you get over it, then it's hard to manage it, especially when we're talking about that continuous validation. That's where we get stuck sometimes. But with that, we can have ways also where we can consolidate those views. So if you do have multiple instances of Apstra, you can have a single powerful view on top.
So I'm sure you've heard a lot of folks are continuously optimizing their environment. There's a lot of focus on costs today. There are some applications that were rushed to the cloud that shouldn't have been in the cloud in the first place. So folks are trying to figure out what to do with them, and some of the options are to bring them back. So I'm curious if you're seeing some of these and how Apstra is helping. If there's any customers that you can name, and if you can't, that's fine. I understand. But if there are any use cases that are in the public that you can bring up, I'd be curious, kind of how they're using Apstra in the real world.
Yeah, and there's absolutely use cases like that. Not saying it's a specific customer, but a very public use case is Zoom. Everybody got very familiar with
Sure.
Zoom a couple years ago when the video conferencing exploded, and Zoom used the public cloud to expand fast because they couldn't get enough hardware quick
Of
enough,
course. Yep.
especially as all of a sudden supply chains screeched to a halt. They couldn't get their hardware, and so they used the public cloud to expand. And what they found, and what many other companies have found, is as they went to the cloud, their margins decreased, especially when you're talking high intensity data types of applications like video conferencing, or now what's coming with AI. That's become the hot topic. And so
Sure.
we absolutely see lots of customers moving to the back and repatriating applications back to an on-prem data center. And Apstra can absolutely help there, because we've seen a lot of return on investments on reducing the time to stand up a data center. Forrester even published a report, and that's out there publicly, on the ROI of Apstra. And what we've seen with a lot of customers that have been doing this kinds of activity of standing up new data centers to bring applications back on-prem is they saw over a 320% ROI when they used Apstra. 320%. And that was full payback with less than 6 months. And they saw savings across the board from day zero, where it was designing. They were saving 60% of time. Day one, it was turning from 24 hours to deploy every single device to less than 2 hours, because they could design everything ahead of time, and they just could plug the device in, and it would get the config and automatically start running. And then even the more powerful part is the day 2 plus, where you're
Okay.
continuing to operate and manage that data center. And they saw additional 60+% savings there for reducing that mean time to repair and mean time to innocence, like we mentioned earlier.
Now, are these numbers compared to the cloud, or are these numbers part of a data center modernization? Like, it's a little more context. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good question. So it's compared to using just what tools they had today. So
Okay.
typically that would be some kind of like Ansible or Python scripting if they were trying to get some scale, or just natively within the CLI. So there was several tools as part of that savings that they were able to get rid of. So they could get rid of all the Ansible scripts they had. If they still wanted to keep them, they could. They could get rid of all the Python or other operation tools to manage and monitor the devices. They were able to consolidate and get rid of a lot of those tools.
So if I were to put you on the spot and ask you about some best practices for network optimization on premises using Apstra, what can you tell me?
Yeah. So what we've seen, and I'll give you some real customer examples. I'll start with a large retail customer. So to kind of set the stage, they used to see hundreds of cases every day on failed shopping carts.
Okay.
And as we're all familiar in the networking world, everybody would blame the network first. Say the shopping cart failed because the network,
Was slow.
it was slow, had a problem, whatever. So it's the network's fault. And so they were always the first to look at cases. And so once they deployed Apstra, and it does more than just the design and build and deploy, that's where that day 2 savings comes into, because we're constantly gathering telemetry and information from the devices to compare against that intent. What we were able to do with that customer is reduce their troubleshooting time from hours down to minutes, or even be able to provide dashboards, because we have dashboards as well that have historical information where they could even show it to other teams and they could say, see, if the dashboard was green at the time the shopping cart failed, it wasn't the network.
Wasn't the
Let's
network.
go, let's go look somewhere else. So that was one. Another one that was also really exciting was a large internet hosting company.
Okay.
And so they used to have all sorts of outages due to failed optics because they had a fairly large deployment. And so they had optics all over the place, and they just couldn't keep up with the optics and replacing them in time. And so they'd have various outages all the time. And so with Apstra and that information we were able to gather, we were able to look at various statistics on the optics from things like power, voltage, temperature, and more to understand when an optic is beginning to degrade. So we were able to proactively help them reduce and prevent issues so they could replace those optics before they failed. So then they no longer had outages due to failed optics. And so that's where they were able to leverage what we call intent-based analytics. And so that's that constant and continuous validation that I've been talking about against the intent of their design.
Fascinating. I got a probe. So
Please.
for a while, I thought the innovation has moved completely just to the cloud providers. But this is, like I said, the intent-based was always interesting to me, but now you're making it even more interesting. But what's coming down the pipe? What can you tell me a little bit about the future of Apstra in particular, some of the capabilities that maybe we can expect? Not holding you to it, but maybe we can expect.
Yeah. So one I'll talk about that's quite interesting. You kind of hinted at it a little bit with AI. Well, we want to keep the core what we've done with the intent-based networking. We also want to explore what we can do with AI to enhance the operator's experience. And guess what? If you're familiar with the Juniper portfolio, we have an AI solution. If you're familiar with our Mist offering, they have a Marvis AI component. So one of the things we're doing, and this isn't just Apstra in the data center, but company-wide, is how can we leverage what Mist has done with the Marvis AI and their predictive and proactive analytics and AI and ML models, is how can we also leverage what they've done and bring that to data center use cases or even WAN use cases, because Juniper has a full portfolio of solutions. Is how can we continue to leverage what we have in-house across our portfolio and make more and more better together stories. And so that is something that be on the lookout for. What we're going to be doing is we'll augment what we've talked about, the power of intent-based networking and the intent-based analytics and continuous validation with Marvis AI.
And so that's not just to inform, right? So you mentioned earlier when we were talking that, one of the advantages is it will be able to notify you very early on so that you can take action.
Right.
But it's also true that you can automate the responses to certain things that happen so that you're always ahead of the situation. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we definitely have that in the product today, where we have where we don't necessarily auto remedy the solution,
Okay.
but we provide you with a button, because we don't want to push any configuration without you
Sure.
as the operator acknowledging. But we'll provide you easy buttons for things like, let's take an easier example, miscabling. So say somebody miscabled or went and changed the cabling. Apstra will immediately determine that, hey, the cabling's wrong, and it will pull the LLDP information, and you can, in one click, say, remedy my intent with what's actually been plugged in, and then it can then start working again as intended.
So if any of our viewers or listeners are interested to learn more, by the way, I'm going to have links and a whole bunch of stuff in the show description below in the show notes. But is there like a live demo environment? How do they demo Apstra? Like, give me a little bit of a sense if someone wants to kind of play with it. How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. We have that. We have both a YouTube channel where we have several short, like 2 to 5 minute long videos, and we'll make sure that's in the links as well.
Yep.
That you can go out and watch and see true business outcomes. So you can see those things that I was talking about and the value that you can get and provide with Apstra. And then we also have a solution called Apstra Cloud Labs, where you can sign up and get access to labs or pre-deployed deployments.
Oh,
So whether
fascinating.
you want to see one that's actually already deployed, or you want to build it from scratch. We have labs and lab guides that give you detailed step-by-step instructions that you can see. And then I'll also point out that we have these Juniper validated designs that take in more than just Apstra, and they combine our entire portfolio of solutions. So you can, if you wanted to look at how would it actually work with combining, the QFX hardware with Apstra, with the XRX for security and firewalls, into a full-blown solution. We have that in Juniper validated designs where you can go look at a very detailed white paper.
Interesting. So, based on your experience, how quickly can you get Apstra to be deployed in an environment? Realistically, like if I'm a small business, if I'm a medium-sized business, if I'm a large business, give me all three. But how easy would it be to get started? Now, you can always optimize. You can optimize, forever, right? But I'm talking initial deployment. What would you guesstimate?
Yeah. So, say a user starting from scratch, they know nothing about Apstra. We have training on our Juniper Education University services. We have both 3 and 5-day courses, and that's usually enough to get somebody knowledgeable enough that they can start playing with the product. And so then, maybe another week or so playing with the product, and then once they're ready to deploy, it's incredibly fast. I've done demos where I've deployed an entire 3-stage IPCLO fabric with thousands of lines of configuration in minutes, in just a few clicks.
Okay.
So because that's that value of those validated designs and those stamped out blueprints, is in just a few clicks you can say, I want this design with these switches, and off it goes and deploys it, and you have now a running fabric in just minutes.
So I'm also curious, is there an offering for a managed service? So can someone have Juniper or a Juniper trusted third party manage this environment, or is it a DIY solution, so to speak?
Most of our customers do it themselves,
Okay.
but we do have a handful that wanted to reduce their overhead, and so they've engaged, whether it's Juniper Professional Services, or we have several partners out there that both offer it as various levels of managed services, from all the way from we'll completely host the virtual machine and everything for you, to we'll help you get started and give you training, and anywhere in between. So we do have offerings via whether it's Juniper Professional Services or our partner community.
Interesting. So I'm super intrigued. I hope everyone that's watching is as well, and I'd love to hear from you all if we should bring Kyle back for a demo of Apstra, and maybe he can show us the product, because as you were talking, I couldn't help but wonder, hey, this would be really great if I could see some of these things.
Oh,
So
yes.
maybe in the next few months here, as we get into conference season for everyone, maybe you and I and someone else, maybe we can do a live demo of some of the things that you're talking about. Hopefully there'll be some newer announcements also that we can show, especially the AI portion that you mentioned. I think that would be incredibly fascinating.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back on and do that.
What else didn't I ask you? What are you hearing from customers? What else should folks know about Apstra, about the environment in general today? Any interesting insights that you'd like to share?
Yeah, one thing we didn't touch on was the developer experience. As the scale and evolution of data centers, people are looking to do things faster, and even get away from even just clicking in the UI. They want to take it to the next stage and completely automate it. And while we have a full set of APIs, our UI is actually a first-class citizen of our APIs. So every API or UI is actually utilizing. But where we're seeing is customers want to take that to the next level. And so what we're doing is things with things like Postman collections and SDKs to give examples and ways to get started. Plus, what everybody's getting to is Terraform.
Okay.
Terraform's kind of the new DevOps preferred tool,
Sure.
and so we have a recently launched Terraform Apstra provider that's out there that people can go out get started with and try, because that's where probably we see a lot of the evolution of where a lot of our customers and enterprises in general are going to be moving towards, is how can they take that to the next level and bring in more automation to it. Think of being able to, as a user, being able to open up a case and say, hey, I want a new service deployed, and it's going to require a new rack and some new virtual LANs and servers deployed. And you could potentially automate all that, from creating a ticket in ServiceNow to fully deploying your service, and nobody has to touch anything. Maybe some approvals in there, but nobody would have to actually touch any UI or do any of the configuration. It could be fully automated based on how you want your environment set up. So that's where we see a lot of promise, and where we see a lot of the future going towards.
I'm gonna throw one more at you. I can't help it. You're just you keep asking, you keep saying things, and my mind's going in a million different directions.
I love it.
How long before, or maybe we're already there, before Apstra becomes application aware? So if the application, let's say, is having a hard time from a network perspective, is maybe it's too much network traffic, maybe there's a lot of latency, is it able to rectify the problem automatically, or is it just going to notify me as quickly as possible so that I can take action? And if it's the latter, will it have recommendations, or is it just flagging that the application is having a networking issue?
Great question. So what we're doing is we're bringing more flow data analytics later this year, to begin to get that type of information.
Okay.
So we can get that network observability and deep insights into what's going on inside your network traffic. And then we can, be able to start with layering on, the alerting, what you talked about, to let you know when there is issues, or say there is a network issue, what applications are impacted, or who's consuming all that bandwidth, or who's hitting your cloud egress cost, or
Right.
or security vulnerabilities. Are you getting attacked from the outside? All sorts of use cases. Where then we can get to your other point is, can you have more actionable insights or options? That's where potentially that Marvis integration, and what we'll be doing in likely more next year, is can we then take all that information, leverage the capabilities that Marvis has within Mist, which it can already do some of those kinds of capabilities in the Mist cloud with campus infrastructures, and we can bring that to the data center and be able to provide actions and recommended, and maybe even one day proactively resolve issues before they go
they even
bad.
happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, a minority report type of situation.
Exactly.
I've been saying for a while that I think the world's going to be very different 6 months from now than it is today. Across the board, all technologies are going to integrate, to leverage, to take advantage of this AI hype that just exploded.
Oh,
And I
yes.
am super excited to see what Juniper does with it. And based on some of the things that you've mentioned here today, I think when the next time we talk, this is going to be super interesting. But let's see what happens with the demo. Maybe we do a demo real soon, and then maybe we'll do something else towards the end of the year. That'll be super interesting, especially how you're going to integrate Marvis and Mist into this. I think that'll be fascinating. Kyle,
Exactly.
thank you so much for making time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I learned a heck of a lot, and I'm going to keep an eye on you guys. See kind of how this is going to progress.
Definitely. It was a pleasure. Thank you for letting me join, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again, and we'll get some live demos and see this in action.
Absolutely. All right. And with that, we'll see you all in the next show.
Thank you.